First of all, thanks for having me here. I'm really happy that Professor Sauna will get to hear my paper. First of all, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, not only because I'm very lazy, but also because I'll be trying to address a certain gap in expressibility, a certain silence that arises whenever art has to deal with the representation of violence. Let me give a brief introduction. I'll be discussing a novel called Contrabando. It got the Juan Rulfo Award in 1991, but it was only published till 2008, which was right after the author died. So it gives kind of a measure of how dangerous it was for he himself. Okay, let's get into that. Literary genre and the traffic of the unspeakable. Contrabando by Hugo Rasco, Banda. La demanda y la contrademanda no son otra cosa que la acción del protagonista y la reacción del antagonista en una obra teatral. Y el dramaturgo es el juez que decide la sentencia en la escena final y es quien da a cada quien lo suyo, como es la definición romana del derecho. Hugo Rasco, Banda, de cuerpo entero, el último acto. All the narratives progressing in Contrabando are woven together by an intradiegetic writer with the characteristics of the author himself. Tangled and entwined are anecdotes, telephone conversations, confessions, and even private wills. There are snatches of secret, loud-pitched conversations, and then the high volume of the forbidden corridos, or corridos prohibidos. Its stories merge the criminal and the policeman in the same gesture of violence, and in doing so provide a connecting bridge between the Mexican novel of drug smuggling and the narrative of Mexican revolution in the duality between corridos and the narco-corridos, anthropology and literary fiction, drama and film, the atmosphere of violent drug fiction, as well as the traits of postmodernist formal experimentation. Rascon Banda's epigraph on justice and drama I just read casts some light on his personal ideas of literature and writing. The author, as a figure of the law, frames and structures his tale against a fundamental schism between diverging reality principles, which provide the basis for a story. Para que haya acción dramática, tiene que haber conflicto. The posthumous publication of the novel Contrabando in 2008 is long predated by an homonymous play, Contrabando, premiered in 1991 at the 4th Great Festival of the City of Mexico and directed by Enrique Pineda. Although somehow modified, this original work will be included in the larger narrative of the upcoming novel. Contrabando begins at the airport, with the cops shooting down two anonymous narcos, bearing assumed names. This preamble signals the point of arrival and departure for both the book and the illegal activity it takes its name from. It is the limbo and the prelude, resonant of chore-like voices screaming, asesinos, asesinos, asesinos. They impose a sense of abandonment of all hope before the author crosses the last threshold. At the end of the book, through multiple genres and formats, these dead criminals find an identical counterpart in the epilogue, with two policemen killed equivalently in a hopeless picture, indefinitely prolonging a wearing off of both sides and the reckless loss of human life. Subsequently stopped at a military checkpoint, yet one more border, the common sense of the narrator makes good use of his persuasion. A veces, la defensa más inocente e ingenua tiene su efecto. Soy escritor. Voy a mi casa en Santa Rosa. Vivo en México. Escribo en proceso. Denunciaré todo. Y santo remedio. Aventaron los papeles sobre el asiento y nos dejaron ir. The rite of passage with Cerberus, in this case the army, seems to elaborate on the trope of Dante's hell, while drawing the main coordinates of the smuggling, points A and B of advance on the corresponding drug vector, rural areas, and then urban ones. Here described as the most naive defense, Rascon Banda's literature undertakes a reconstruction using expressive resources drawn from other traditions, while also addressing an autobiographical journey in which the native man of Santa Rosa is also a somewhat renowned journalist. Not only must he answer the question for the expressibility of violence, which ultimately is the quintessential problem of naming the unnameable, to the extent that memory is any text. Writing for the author will be a trial and a landscape of transcendence where human actions are weighed and signified beyond themselves. Throughout the novel, this rumination on writing emerges again and again between the stories of death and betrayal in drug trafficking, opening a multitude of clandestine narratives behind closed doors. It constantly poses the question of writing, especially wondering about that scripture to account for its own disjointed, aphasic antagonist and twin. violence. The voice of the writer and journalist could tear off the veil of silence and impunity. Todos son parientes o compadres o amigos, pero nadie quiere denunciar eso. La traición y el contrabando terminan con muchas vidas, acaban también con pueblos. Santa Rosa es ahora un pueblo de puertas cerradas. The extreme circumstances of drug war in Mexico have been addressed by authors such as Jim Franco and Rosana Reguillo through the image of mutilated or decomposing corpses, which only give a faint idea of the devastation they have produced in the social body. Ponen en evidencia el quiebre de la institucionalidad y el fortalecimiento de una paralegalidad que mina el pacto social. This is Reguillo. Where the ordinary courts have given up and police corruption reigns, judgment and justice through writing will persist, bequeathing its sentences to history. This ability to see, the police-like way of observing that everyone perceives in the narrator and the writer throughout the novel is not to be underestimated, since it will provide the ultimate distinction for a society whose bloodlines are all entangled and tainted by violence. Las gentes y las parentelas son como las raíces de los encinos que crecen y se topan debajo de la tierra y se juntan. Son como las napaleras tupidas. Uno no sabe dónde acaba un nopal y dónde empieza el otro. Así se mezcla la gente. Familias enemigas terminan siendo amigas por una boda, como pasó con los Salcedo. The most important precedent of Contrabando, besides the original play, is clearly Volver a Santa Rosa, which is a previous book by Rasco and Banda, a sort of postmodern Bildungsroman about the young boy's discovery of writing and writing about violence as one, while retelling events that occurred to him in his hometown, which is Santa Rosa de Lima de Uruguachi, en el estado de Chihuahua. Although the Santa Rosa of his childhood and the one of his maturity have similarities, especially in regards to violence and poverty, the drug business and its concomitant effects on the social body, mainly as a narrated body, have taken over the whole picture. Drug trafficking has become one with the population as a whole, turning it into a homogeneous, almost slimy multitude. El agua igualó a todos porque entre el lodazal y los chorros no se sabía quién era quién, paisano o forastero, pobre o rico, narco o autoridad. En el Yoquibo había de todo. We could in fact apply here the term hyperrealism that Miragan, in 2004, uses to describe the original play on the basis of its expressive exaggerations, which lead to experimentation on the format while attempting to account for the subaltern voices. By virtue of this search after expression, the dead are alive, and the offsets push us out of the novel and into the theater, and then further into a film theater as an attempt to express a name, a pain, a loss. Although we start within the framework of realism, which harks back to the narrative of the Vuelta a Santa Rosa, we quickly end up within the confines of hyperrealism, which specifically distinguishes Contrabando among the whole genre of narco novels. Such distinction allows for yet an additional one made by Diana Palaverish about the theatrical play. Es importante señalar que el texto problematiza de manera autorreferencial dos asuntos clave relacionados con la representación literaria del tema narco, planteados, por cierto, un par de décadas antes del boom editorial de dicha narrativa. La posición ética del escritor frente al material que presenta y la búsqueda de un género literario idóneo para captar la magnitud del impacto del narcotráfico sobre la vida individual y colectiva del país. This proclivity to become obsessed with registering the truth is probably imparted to the author from two traditions. First, from that which has been corrido song's traditional purpose, to narrate and spread news, and second, from the true crime genre, always prone to provide further documental proof of its real plots, just as the narco novels to come will do whenever they rebasan el intento de ficcionalización porque demuestran una investigación exhaustiva del proceso explícita en la gran cantidad de datos biográficos, geográficos y lingüísticos. Drawing from both phylogenies and going beyond them, Contrabando stands out as a hyperrealist narrative. It deploys certain characteristics from the aforementioned genre in the search for truth and transcendence of meaning, to the point of including audiovisual resources. Elaine Scarry states that physical pain is difficult to express, and that this inexpressibility has political consequences. A narrative purpose determines the character of the corrido, as well as its social function. Hay como una ascensión a la voz plena, a que se sepa y se diga y se propague. From the point of view of Lezama Lima, it could even be that noir novels and corridos were never so far apart. El corrido puede empeñarse en hechos de significación menor, pero lo que más lo nutre es el suceso del folletín y las lágrimas provincianas de Telésforo por Irene. We could draw a similar movement for language as it is deployed in Contrabando, bringing the private and the public into question by means of denouncing silence and confronting a difficulty we all know, but only the writer faces with the full intensity of a challenge. Vinadas makes a sharp analysis of this situation and its relationship to the show and tell, when reviewing how she learned to make a distinction between both as a listener and an anthropologist, when she relates her experience in India and her realization of the existence of a poisoned knowledge. Al permitir que su dolor me sucediera a mí, me enseñó que redimir la vida de las violaciones a las que había sido sometida era un acto de compromiso de por vida con un conocimiento envenenado. Al digerir este veneno, en los actos de atender a lo cotidiano, pudo enseñarme a respetar las fronteras entre decir y mostrar. Her situation closely remembers that of our author, in an attempt to reveal his intimate knowledge of this dilemma, simultaneously as a writer and a native of Santa Rosa, Rasco Banda must deal with a wide variety of obstacles which ultimately prevent him from framing his novel within a single literary genre, contributing to a performative dimension of showing that becomes telling. Denunciar las mentiras oficiales es a la vez un acto de mostrar y de hacer. No me refiero tan solo a la transformación en la que las víctimas se convierten en asesinos, como lo ha argumentado Madani en su reciente libro, sino a las situaciones en las que la violencia se arraiga de tal manera en el tejido social que se convierte en una parte indiferenciable de lo social. For drug trafficking, the conflict has been addressed as a Colombianization of the drug war, especially for Mexico, because it affects the whole social body. The constant reformatting in the novel, unpredictable from one story to the next, seems to correspond with the daily life which has been denied by the violent event, resulting in a reappropriation of the pure negativity that broke the chain of meaning in the first place. As for the question of how to narrate violence, while also struggling to draw light into the ethics of writing as the trafficking with poisoned knowledge, Rasco Banda, as well as Vinadas, agree that the understanding of another person's pain can, in turn, only be achieved through one's own suffering, through listening and opening up to someone else's wound. La verdad es que me han colgado muchas etiquetas. Dicen que escribo un teatro documental, subversivo, contestatario. Yo creo que ninguna de esas clasificaciones es acertada porque en principio no concibo que una obra, bajo determinado género, vaya a servirme de pretexto para manifestarme sobre un aspecto social que me cause alguna preocupación. Por otra parte, si uno se sujeta a determinado género y estilo en una actitud predeterminada, las obras pierden frescura. Si se procede de esta manera, se nota la manipulación que el autor en buena medida ejerce sobre los personajes y la anécdota inevitablemente tiende a desarrollarse de una forma fría. This is Rasco Banda himself. While facing the need of coherence between the representation and the represented, the signifier and the signified, the author stands as a rare literary reference in the narco-novels genre, as he proves to be capable of narrating the drug war and expressing its social implications without the elements of false reconciliation that are so common among other true crime writers, as is the case with Ciudad de Dios, I guess. Rasco Banda makes use of the performative qualities of literature to express the pain of others, even if such success only occurs by means of silence and by causing the short circuit of the senses. Only then, showing and telling become one in the effort of reading other people's pain, floating in the social body and the personal accounts of people that come to the writer in their search for justice. Nombrar la violencia no refleja únicamente luchas semánticas, refleja el punto en que el cuerpo del lenguaje resulta indiferenciable del cuerpo del mundo. El acto de nombrar constituye una expresión performativa. This is Vinadas. Besides the obvious reference to the corrido Contrabando y Traición, composed by Ángel Tucán González for the Banda La Costeña and Los Tigres del Norte, the title Contraband can also allude to other meanings when applied to the work of a writer as it is seen within the novel. Since the idea of a transaction or smuggling is already implicit in the nature of literary figures, such as metaphor and metonymy, literature can be itself seen as a sort of trafficking. The problematic relationship between literature and violence, the structure and the matter, in the case of Contrabando, lets us catch a glimpse of true poisoned knowledge, guiding us as we penetrate into the open wound of drug trafficking, connecting, consuming, and producing countries in a continuum of devastation, the actual reverse of prohibition. As with the corridos and narco-corridos, it is far from these novels' objectives to provide a poetic transmission of events. Rather, it represents a performative attempt to check the reality principle that unifies the experience of the reader within the limits and resources of a single genre, precisely with the purpose of trafficking with a poison kind of knowledge. The dilemma of writing about violence is solved by Rasco's Banda through continuous swinging from one genre to another. Such a short circuit of syntax, format, and style prevents us from imagining the kind of unified portrait we usually find in true crime novels and narco novels in general. In this sense, the novel openly opposes the logic of traditional testimony, which usually aims to recreate a single version of the events. Rather, Contrabando bears testimony to the untestimoniable, the unnameable, that which cannot ever be expressed in memory or imagination. It tells of the deep schism that came to shatter everyday life through violence and pain, negating it. Because of this collapse of language, we are constantly being pushed forward without any transitions of meaning, impeding us to tame the experiences as yet one more exponent within the conventions of a given preconceived narrative. If generally speaking, we tend to think of a genre as a whole set of similar units, it happens the other way around in this case. The same category is won by the opposite characteristic. Contrabando's main feature, as a modern novel, relies on its reluctance to unify, to unity, so it gains access in the genre mainly by being formally problematic. In Rasco's Banda, creative writing and poetics, in the sense of technique and meta-language, are the focus of a crisis that replicates the destruction of reality.